Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Divorce Unplugged podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Nicole Cox. You may know me on socials as the Family Law Liaison.
Hi, everybody. Keegan Burke. You may recognize me as Divorceology on all the socials. I'll do my disclosure. Not a lawyer, not lawyering, not your lawyer. This isn't legal advice. This is a conversation, all things divorce and custody. But want to make sure you realize that you should be doing your own checking and own investigation with legal counsel, as we are not that.
Exactly. I am a lawyer, but I am not your lawyer. And we are not giving legal advice today. And actually, today we are going to go toe to toe with some opposing views, which is going to be really interesting.
We actually talk about it pretty frequently, but I think it's a hot one, and that is false allegations versus believing the victim, right? And so, in my opinion, from a man's perspective, it is where it is all too often abused, all too often used, and it is call it the silver bullet, the nuclear option. It's the thing that is most devastating to particularly men because it gives the opposing side who makes the claim, true or not, complete control of the case. And that's, from a man's perspective, the most dangerous element of divorce and custody battles is when allegations, especially if untrue, are most devastating to the man.
They can be devastating to both. I'll give you that. It can be most devastating to the man. And that's really pretty interesting because a woman that just wants to come out immediately with very little, I would say, evidentiary behind her, and say that she's been being abused, it's really hard to prove. I know you think it isn't, but it really actually is. So I think there's two ways to look at it. Like if you're dealing with somebody who has false allegations against them, then you need to make sure that you have a lot of evidence to prove that you can go back far into their lifetime. I mean, a lot of the times we use pictures, right? We use a lot of photographs and videos. Can you get like information from that now? Yes.
Yeah, you absolutely can, and I think it's a big point that is, you can leverage it to defend yourself. But my gripe is the onset of allegations, right? And the general tendency, and I think it's relatively normal that folks have really attached themselves over the last several years to the Me Too movement, right? Just because it's said, it should be believed. And I think that happens way more frequently than it should. And I think the other problem with false allegations from a man's perspective is it's sort of like squeezing toothpaste out of the tube. You can't put it back in the tube. And the general tendency of courts, in my experience, is, well, we will figure it all out and we can prove it right or wrong. But until we do, we're going to eliminate or remove the person who's accused falsely from the equation. We're going to give, temporary restraining orders. We're going to grant temporary complete control of custody. We're going to, require that the man leave the home and maintain the home. And so I think that the problem maybe if as we kind of unpack this live is that ultimately, fine. Yes, you can do things to defend against false allegations. There are some things that sometimes that false allegations land and stick and are significantly impactful to the man and a woman, right? False allegations in general. The problem is it never gets resolved fast enough, right? So we don't get to an evidentiary hearing. We don't get due process. We don't get resolution and the ability to fix it where you haven't harmed potentially a relationship with a child or children, and or you don't get the ship righted fast enough.
Or a
And the
reputation
steamrolling
in
effect of those
business.
allegations.
You can ruin a reputation in business. And I
Yeah.
hear what you're saying.
What are some of the things that we know can be modified?
Okay, so certain things can be modified. I think we just discussed child support, parenting plans, parenting time, spousal. Sometimes holidays actually can be modified as well. And in certain circumstances, you can use a modification hearing, which my client is doing right now, to get some court appointed officials like forensic counselors involved. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I would say all of those things are modifiable for assuming you have reason, right? Good cause, if you will. But I would always say that before you run into court and turn it into a court battle and leave the decision up to a judge or a professional on your
Mhm.
case, do everything humanly possible to try to negotiate the changes that you seek, maybe the changes that your kids seek or that you need. Something happens that you need some reprieve or relief from the other party. Ideally, you're working in a cooperative environment. Now, I know, and Nicole knows,
Yes.
that isn't always the case, and you need court. But ultimately, if you were to ask me, hey, what should I do? I think the first stop is go to the other party and figure out, what are the things that you need to do. However, don't just run to the other party blindly and lay out your case or lay out your argument or make an argument. Have a coach give you guidance on what to ask for and how to ask for it in hopes of getting what you need, in a sensible fashion.
Right, and you actually made a good point just a minute ago, which I thought about. As children grow older, there's modifications necessary because they have different needs, and usually their needs grow.
100%. And I think in most cases, right, it's the most reasonable change in my mind, right? As the kids' needs evolve, as their desires evolve, maybe as their experiences evolve, those are justifiable reasons to go make modifications. And by the way, kids as they get older have more of a say, right? Not to put the pressure on the kids, but they do generally get more of a say. And until that point, right, it's you're making sure that you're following the orders too. Just as a quick anecdote, don't just because a kid's saying one thing, you think that the kid gets the say, right? You're the parent. Follow the order until the orders change or an agreement is met. Have with it. And by the way, this goes to the other point that you kind of I think is important. False allegations, no matter what level, are devastating to a man, especially if it's an abusive allegation of any kind, right? Verbal, coercive, physical, emotional, all those things, right? And it's one of those things that you can't really correct. And more importantly, we never do. The woman, and again, I'm taking the man's side on this one, the
You
woman
sure
is
are.
never, the woman who makes a false allegation I have yet to see be held accountable for false allegations. And I think to the end my point, accountability of making a false statement or a false allegation of abuse, the repercussions of that, if you can prove it's false, should be massive so that it scares people away from false allegations. And more importantly, it's just as detrimental to those being abused, right? So men
Okay,
and women
now
should be
you're
screaming
hitting
from
on
the
it.
rooftop.
Now you're hitting on a good point. The point is it's going to hurt each person
100%.
somehow.
Yeah,
Yes.
100%. Yes.
Whether
So,
it's a financial economic hit, whether it's a reputational hit because you have goodwill in a business, all those things. That's why I'm saying when people are really women are really being abused. And it is
yeah.
still October abuse month. I'm going to put that out there, and I am a survivor. When you're really actually and it's serious abuse, it takes a minute to come out, and it's not going to
Yes.
be all of a sudden. You're going to endure so much until you can't anymore.
Yes, and I will finish the point on abuse from a man's perspective, and specifically false abuse allegations. Men, you have to be accountable for your behavior, what you say, when you say it, how you say it, while you're in your relationship, after
Yeah,
you get out of the relationship, the way you correspond. Everything you do is going to be viewed through a microscopic lens. And okay, men, if you get angry, okay, fine. But like, you really need to start thinking about what could be perceived or misused. You get into arguments, don't be screaming on the phone. If you're on speakerphone while
that's
she's
true.
out with her girlfriends, well, now you've got witnesses, right? And it's always, and listen, the reality is relationships aren't perfect. Men or women are not perfect. But I can tell you that the problem with divorce and or separation and custody is those imperfections are magnified on levels that you can't imagine. And so all I would say to men is this: be a good human being, make sure you're not abusive, even verbally, be considerate of your actions, of your statements, of all the things, but really keep in the back of your mind that if this is the direction it's going, there will be an opportunity, maybe not immediately, to have your day to prove your innocence, just as long as you have your ducks in order, which goes to what we always talk about is have a coach, make sure you know what you're doing, make sure you know how you're going to defend against it, document, video, all the things, right? But don't be abusive, protect those that are abused, and stop making false allegations, men or women, because it's such a bad scene for both parties, but I think ultimately for the kids, because a person who isn't abusive gets ripped from them overnight.
Okay. I mean, that was obviously a lot. First of all, the thing about child support is that women, okay, have the babies, right? We put so much effort into making sure the family's put together, everybody's well fed, everybody's taking the kids are on time to places, all the things. We put so much work into things. Maybe in some circumstances, a woman is actually working for the husband or the family business. Okay. Now she's not getting paid, but she's working for the business. I mean, there's so many things that women do to pour into their family and their husband, and it makes me want to throw up right now. And if I'm going to start saying things, I'm afraid we might get canceled. So I have to stop myself and breathe. But let me tell you something else. If we didn't have child support, we would have every I'm not going to say the words I want to. Every Peter Pan, unresponsible man running around and creating children and not taking responsibility for it. Then what? The moms have to sit home? The single moms have to go and work 3 jobs just to put food in the kids' mouths?
Okay.
I got
So
animated, but it's true.
Okay, so this is where I hear what you're saying, right? And I think in a traditional home environment where father is working, mother has put her job aside and is raising a family. Like the reality is motherhood, being a mother is a full-time job in and of itself, right?
Yes.
But again, separating that from child support as a child necessity item, not an equalization, right? Because equalization to me is you stayed together, you figured out how to stay together, you made the relationship work.
Okay, but what if somebody got thrown out of the house with a 1.5-year-old and didn't have an option? That wasn't
Well,
equalization.
no, but there are spousal support, there are other support mechanisms, and there are time um, barriers that I think can be applied there, right? Like a get on your feet period, a supplemental piece to it. Child support all too often is viewed solely for the purposes of equalizing the experience for the kid from one house to the next. Perfect example. Let's say that person with a 1.5-year-old gets thrown out of the house. Let's say it's a woman, she gets a new relationship, that person is extremely well to do.
It was me, Keegan.
And
It's
and
part
so
of
I think it's important, right, just generally speaking, from a coach's perspective, it's you don't want to get caught trying to unwind what's already in place. You want to be focused on what are the things that are tangible that need change now and going forward, right? Like
yeah.
because unwinding, appealing, trying to argue historical doesn't land well with courts because they consider it, case closed. We're not going to retry the same topics. What's new, what's changed, and what's relevant to best interests, what's a
Right.
material and impactful, change in the circumstances before us, and why should we be making this change?
Right, or maybe father finally got a job, and then the vocational assessment reflected that, and it was imputed on him. Things like that. Just give an
Or
example.
maybe mom got a job or actually reports the income that she could have been earning or has been earning through another entity for a period of time.
And it goes
Uh,
both ways. It does.
the cookie crumbles for everybody,
It does.
no question. A person, man or woman, should not be penalized for being successful.
Okay, and okay, but also I think what we're talking about is you're talking about 2 people that are actually sane and normal
Yes.
and co-parent together. You're not talking about somebody that's been found to be unfit, that doesn't show up ever at all. So I think we're thinking about, 2 different scenarios right now, which is what we're not agreeing on is that if somebody just decides to be not present and
Well,
do all those things, then I think that absolutely child support is warranted.
well, yes and no, because in my mind, if you peel those things back, right? A child's survival, right? Let's just boil it down to survival, necessity, right? School, health, maybe, sports, right?
Roof
The
over their
basic
head, a
necessities.
car to drive in, going to the doctors, some extracurriculars, clothes, all those things.
Yeah, fine. Fine, but there's still a number there. And that number should be removed from what is available to either side, right? The child's expense is the child's expense. That child costs a certain amount of money to raise. And both parties are responsible for the time that they have with their child. Like each side has to have a home, has to have a roof, has to have all the things. And both parties, at some point, again, this is a supplemental piece, should be self sustaining, have the home, have the things that the child can be there. And by the way, I even go so far as to say, if after a certain amount of time, the, let's say the mother in this situation or the lesser earner isn't capable of creating that stability and the other is and they're saying I want more time, well then we should be considering, well, where should the child go? Because if the other person can't get their stuff together, can't get an income, can't create the stability they need economically, and the other side is arguing for more time and that's the argument around the economics, then we need to make a switch,
I
right?
don't agree at
Okay,
all.
I'll take the child and mom can go get a job, mom can go get her house, can go get her things in order. I've supplemented, right, the adjacent piece for that person to get on their feet. That's
Well,
not child support. That's spousal or relational support.
I don't agree with your argument at all. There is an amount of money that gets imputed every time you go into court, and that is what they use. They
Mhm.
use that number.
Unless you're making like FU money, right? It
So
nets
that's what
down
we're
after
talking about, my
taxes.
friend, is we're talking about people that are
Well,
making FU money. And I know that's why I
no,
think
I see.
uh,
Yeah, well, I'm
there's a
talking about the
difference.
everyday John, Joe, Sam, Susie, and Sally, right? Like the reality is the support is so burdensome on the paying party and incentivizes the receiving party so much to argue for custody because the financial incentive is there that it perpetuates the argument. And that's where I think that the system is flawed all the way through. I can see your points, right? They're valid in that, there's a certain element of support and maintenance that needs to be in place. But at some point, right, there's a pure baseline expense element that should be applied here, not just because the guy is making a little better than, above average earning, that he just gets penalized on a compounding basis.
Right, and I see
That's
what you're
my
saying
opinion.
is and maybe in
Sure.
some places that I've lived or some clients that I've worked with where it's like, what? So these guys get to run around and just get like with a ton of money, just get all these women pregnant and then not pay child support and then leave them? I don't think so.
Again, I'm not, and this is a great, it's funny because we could talk for literally days on this topic. I'm not saying that child support shouldn't exist. I'm just saying that, again, just because you have a child and you make a ton of money, that the mother of that child is entitled to more money just because you've had a child with her. That to me is sort of nuts, but I disagree, or I agree with you that, like, no, you shouldn't be throwing women to the curb. You shouldn't be throwing your child to the curb. You have a responsibility. If you're going to go do that and have kids, there's going to be a responsibility element to it. That's sane logic.
Mhm.
But at some point, you have, like, it's not attached to earning capability or earning capacity. It's what is the cost of the kid, period. Like, there's a hard cost. It doesn't, it's not, it's like, if I married a megastar and we had a kid, I shouldn't get more money from her for the child just because we have a child together. Like because she makes millions of dollars.
Well, different
That doesn't
states
sit with me.
look at it different, okay?
True, true. That's fair. That's fair.
Different
I just
states
think
look at it
I think
different.
the support system's messed up all the way through.
I know.
thank you to everybody for listening.
Mhm.
And hopefully this was helpful because really every one of these situations has a completely opposing perspective. And it's not that, both are wrong and or one is wrong, one is right. It's that there are different ways to look at everything. So you have to keep that in mind.
And each person is going through something on the other side.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so until next time, like, listen, subscribe, do all the things. We thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you guys soon.